We'd like to welcome May Moon and Dr. Dave Allen. May is one of our regular visitors. We can't keep her away. She's from Vancouver in Canada and has been running an amazing magazine and publishing group called 12 High Chicks for a number of years. Puts on a wonderful annual Cannabis Cup. And has also been for a long time involved in the medical cannabis and other industry in Canada. And Dr. Dave Allen is from, at the moment, California, and you're a retired surgeon, heart surgeon, and he's also become a very, very committed cannabis activist as the years has gone on. And these two lovely people are going to talk to us a bit about basically in Canada in July. It is going to be federally legal for people who enjoy it. But those things always sound much better than they really are. So we'll be hearing about some of, I guess, the ups and downs of legal cannabis in Canada. Thank you. Over you go.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So just behind you guys there are a whole bunch of free magazines. It's called The Highway. Our friend Julie is from the United States, but she publishes that with her partner out of Quebec. So if you guys would like a copy, it's back there. There's some info on myself and the Mom Cup that I do every year. So David and I are up here to talk a little bit about the consequences of legalization and where it's brought us to now. And David and I kind of accidentally became friends during the first Mom Cup. Someone we both knew kind of said, "You need to have this doctor here. He's amazing and you want him to speak at your cup." And I said, okay. It was totally last minute and I brought him out and sure enough, he was absolutely amazing. And David has experienced a lot of the same things that I have. With legalization, with pushing forward to have cannabis be available for everyone, there has been serious consequences. I have lost everything and had to rebuild and lost it again. And I think this is where David and I have really, kind of bonded because he's done the same thing.
Yeah.
You feel like your speaker is a little bit.
We suffered.
Oh.
It's not on, I guess.
Oh,
Okay.
or technical difficulties. But yeah, so we've had quite the triumph. It was 2001. July 1st actually was when they made medicinal cannabis legal in Canada for those that applied and were able to pass the qualifications to get there. And that was kind of the first stepping stone to where we're at now. And everyone keeps talking about how July 1st is going to be the day they legalize cannabis, and that is not actually the case. The date has been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And I mean, there's even a chance now that this isn't going to even happen in this election. It's going to come up with the new election. Time is going to tell here, but it's looking like it's not going to happen the way we all expected. And from 2011 to now, we've watched tons of people being raided and arrested and charged. And one of the biggest ones we ever saw was during Project Gator, which I think it was over 300 people in Ontario were arrested in less than 24 hours for running dispensaries. And they weren't going after the big people, they were just going after everyone. And they took them all out. And our government has no plan to really work with those that have been in the industry for the last 15, 20 years. They plan to come in with their government-run buildings, with their government employees, and they're taking over, and there's no room for anyone else. And I believe, David, you've also kind of seen this as well in California, except you started in Mississippi, and you can tell me a little bit more about how things have been crazy for you, I suppose.
Well, we all suffered from the drug war, and it attacks not just the person, it attacks their family. And now they have private prisons. I was in a private prison myself for 14 months before the trial, and I was saved by jury nullification. And I guess we're here to kind of to help you all organize and get things going so you can get cannabis legalized here. It's still not legal in California. It's semi-legal. And the drug war is not going to end. It's going to change. It's going to morph into something different. And so we're going to have to develop our own weapons to fight this war. One thing I can tell you is there's a legal precedent called the necessity defense. And what that means is you can you can break any law if it was necessary for you to break that law to protect yourself. I don't know if that holds here in Australia, but in the United States, so if there was a fire and you had to put it out, you had to break into some place to get a hose to put it out, you could say, this was necessary for me to do this. Now, Robert Randall was one of the first people that used the necessity defense in a cannabis case, and he said, and the judge said in his case, that any sane human would deliberately break the law if it was going to save his life or limb or property or eyesight. And so cannabis is a metabolic necessity for humans and for animals. And many of the diseases we have today is because it's no longer in our diet. And some of the disease states we have names for, like Crohn's disease, will be renamed in the future as metabolic deficiencies in the ECS, the endocannabinoid signaling system. So this is a chemical communication system that regulates all body functions. I'm an expert in pathophysiology. And so people need to put this in their diets. If you eat it raw, the government doesn't want you to know this. If you eat it raw, it doesn't get you high. So if you heat it in a brownie or heat it in a cookie and eat that, it will get you high. But the true value of cannabis is the nutraceutical value. It's a nutritional substance that should be in our, like a super vitamin that augments our own endocannabinoid signaling system. So if you don't understand what the ECS is, please research this. Part of the propaganda of the drug war is that it makes police and people involved in the law reject this information about the science of cannabis. So if you try to go up to a police officer and tell them about cannabis, they will reject any information you try to give them as being annoying or inconsequential. And so part of the problem is educating people about the ECS.
Thank you, David. And you were punished for, was it 2 years? For
I was in prison 14 months pre-trial.
Pre-trial, and you were let go after that. That's amazing. I have actually not spent more than, I think it was an 8-hour in a holding cell for something that I had actually done, but due to the circumstances was let go. I've gone through actually 6 cases in the last 5 years. It's been pretty wild. None of them have been successful on the other side. I've won them all, but it's been very trying to, get through each case, and it can be very scary because they come after everything. And one of my previous talks here, I believe it was last Mardi Gras, I had spoken about people coming up with backup plans and having, people there for your children or your family in case such a thing was to happen. My kind of adventure into cannabis started when I had my operation on my legs when I was 12, and they decided to give me opiates versus something that would be a better alternative. And I switched over to cannabis completely when I was 18 years of age. When I moved to Vancouver, I decided I would open up a dispensary, and I was not going to open it up via the federal way. I opened up a company called 3 Happy Cats, and I ran that for 5 years until municipal legalization happened in Vancouver, and I applied for a license. And the way the city spun it was, you're all going to get a license, you just need to tell us where you are and apply, and we'll give you the license. Well, it turns out that wasn't the case, and our company was denied its license in 2015 and was told to close the doors by April 28th, I think it was, of 2016, and we closed in December because we weren't going to push too much further on that. But that was really crazy to watch a whole city put trust into itself and then watch it kind of implode. And now there's many dispensaries running in Vancouver, they're running illegally, and they're just fining them constantly in order to, I guess, make it look like they're trying to do something against these dispensaries. And now the entire city is now facing this new dilemma where we might have to buy licensed producers marijuana, and I'm not really sure where it's going. It's been really wild. Some people I've known have lost their absolute everything in the process of trying to move forward with legalization. Recently, they did something called Project Gator, where they took out a few mainstream people. You'll actually see some of them on the cover of that magazine there, where they spent, I think it was 2 million Canadian dollars to track down these few people to bust them. Like, that's a lot of money to ruin people's lives. Pretty wild. And they were all sent home with, I think it was somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 fines. And the government's plan now is to just fine all of the freedom fighters to the point where they can't fight anymore, or jail them to the extent where they can't get out and they don't have the money or the resources to do what they used to do. It's a really wild situation. Actually, I'm not really sure how it's going in California versus what we're seeing in British Columbia and the rest of Canada, but we went from really feeling like legalization was going to bring us freedom, and now we're watching more arrests than we've ever seen. I believe we've had the highest amount of marijuana arrests in the last 2 years than we have in the last decade. I'm not really sure where. I think it was the province newspaper that printed that. I'd be happy to actually look that up and answer that question in full after this presentation. But yeah, I was really shocked to see that there were so many people being arrested. And then with the exchange, we had something called the ACMPR, and then we went on to the MMPR, the MMAR to the MMPR to the ACMPR. And there were a lot of arrests during the middle of that as well, because some people were waiting for their new license, so they would come and nab them and do it again. And it's just been really interesting to watch so many people, lose it all, and the government just keeps moving forward to squish everyone. And I think you definitely experienced that. You were saying something like, how many people came to come and get you when they felt it was time to take you out?
A crew.
A crew, yeah. The one time we were ever surrounded by police, it was, I believe, three squat cars, and the irony is that they didn't have enough handcuffs to arrest us all. Way to go, guys. You wonder who's the stoners then when you hear that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, it's been a really wild adventure, and I'm looking forward to legalization, but everything that's leading up to that is really terrifying, and we just don't know who's next. And really that's what it's come down to, is who's the next one to be arrested. I was bold enough to throw something called the Mom Cup again, knowing that there was a potential to be in big trouble. This cup, we literally had 200 judges across Canada, as well as 200 judges within the city of Vancouver. And we sent out pot packages to those that were 19 or older, recreational. We didn't even bother to do medicinal. As long as you were able to provide us with ID and buy a ticket, we sent them a package full of weed and extracts and a whole bunch of fun goodies. And that was quite an experiment on its own, actually, because we ended up having the final party in Surrey, which is probably like one of the other biggest or best mistakes to ever do, because it's right in federal police territory. But we did it, and we got through it, and we had fun. It was quite the adventure. It snowed in the middle of this cup, too. We had police come and attend on the Saturday night, and that was also very interesting, that they just kind of came to the door and left, despite, the knowledge of what was going on, I suppose. Legalization, getting up to where we are, has been just wow. We've seen people be extradited to the United States as well, losing 5-10 years of their life to being sent somewhere else.
Yeah, Mark Emery was sent to Mississippi prison for 8 years, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes, that's correct. And my friend Brian from Point to Point Sales was sent away for 25 years with no chance of parole for less seeds than Mark Emery was sent away for. And I don't actually know the status. That was in 2009 that they finally came for Brian. And he's like, we had a little safety meeting, as he called it, and we all smoked some joints. He's like, well, it's time, guys. I'm going to go, and it's over. It's been a slice. And that was actually my big first experience, because I didn't really know Mark, but I knew Brian because he was my boss, right? We sold timeshares back in the day. What a bad job, but it was such a fun experience too. I enjoyed that. But yeah, he did that crime when he was really young, and they didn't come for him for quite some time. It was, I think 5 years after the crime was committed, they finally decided that they were going to extradite him. And he's not the only one. There's hundreds of Canadians that have been extradited for, lifetime sentences.
It's a big business.
It is a big business. And Canada recently, in the last 5 years, we just brought in privatized prisons from America. Thanks, guys, because that's what we needed.
I was in a privatized prison, too.
Yeah, and what they do with privatized prisons is they put you in there, and you're basically a workhorse until you're dismissed or you die in the process. I actually was appalled. The first year I did the Mom Cup, I bought some of my Mom Cup bags and found out that they were pressed at the prison facility across the border in Washington. So I no longer buy from them now that I know that and I research my stuff a little better. But what irony, pressing 12 High Chicks bags for, being arrested and charged for marijuana. Your crime is now pressing marijuana shirts.
Nothing about the drug war makes sense.
It doesn't. Like, who authorized that, seriously? Like, if I was looking at that, I'd be like, I'm not making a bunch of ex-criminals or do this. It's just wild.
So I kind of wanted to give you some things that you guys could do to help yourselves.
Yeah, so you don't kind of
and-
get the same problems we ended up running into.
And I think one of the biggest things you can do is court support and prison outreach. So I'm a member of several prison outreach organizations in California. POW 420 is here, and you guys could join POW 420 and organize court support, and it makes a major difference. Sometimes we have 30 people show up in a courtroom with these little ribbons on to show everybody, show solidarity. And it makes a major, it throws them off their game because they're used to doing their dirty deeds in the dark. And so when they have a crowd of people, it throws them off their game. So try to do court support, write letters to people in prison. There should be somebody that organizes a list of prisoners that are incarcerated in Australia and that you could write to them and send them money on their books. The guards at the prison hate pot prisoners receiving letters from fans because it shows them that what they're doing is not right. And so these are psychological tools that you can use to help win this war. If you could find a lawyer that was actually honest and not working for the Crown, then you could get somebody to file suit for a medical necessity, that cannabis is a medical necessity for humans. You can, when police arrest somebody, walk by them and say, you're hurting your own family by enforcing this law, and walk off. Just anytime you talk to somebody about cannabis, tell them this is a new science and it's going to change our lives.
I think another way to also help with this situation, and I realize Australian politics is very different than Canadian. By fluke, someone asked me to join a political party that kind of matched the things that I felt, and I went in and I helped change policy and Canadian laws by joining this party. And I feel if you all banded together and chose the party that matched you best and brought in your ideas of wanting cannabis and medicine and a constitution and a charter of rights and freedoms, that is how you guys are going to move forward. I cannot believe you do not have something to protect who you are as people. And if all of you joined your political parties and demanded it, you will outnumber the politicians. That was the part I didn't get. When I joined politics, I was afraid. I was a little girl in a big giant room full of guys in suits. Guess what? They are people too. They are just like you, and they have been doing this because it is their job. And if enough of you show up, their vote is just as good as yours. And I watched a room of young people overthrow the table because there was enough of them to overvote the ones that had been there that didn't want to see the change happen. It's kind of up to you guys as a group. Like, your country needs to get together and make this important change happen. If anything, a Charter of Rights and Freedoms is super important, not just for you, but for the children that you have and their future. It's super important because that's how we got medical cannabis in Canada. They were denying it. And we used our charter as a way to push them in a court of law to make them give us medical cannabis because we have the right to take care of ourselves, even if it's a crime. So using medical cannabis, they had to do it. And at one point, they took away our right to grow. And yet again, we used our charter to push that. And then we got our right to grow back. So if all of you guys could, reach out to your neighbor, I don't care what parties you join the one that matches you. And then work from there, because you guys can change some of the policies. If you don't like their policy on how they handle whatever it may be, you and your 50 neighbors go in and you change that policy. And now that party is absolutely what you want. And that's what you guys need.
And remember that the people that are in prison here, their fate is linked
To yours.
your fate. And so you guys should send letters to Tony Bauer and Dr. Pott and anybody else that's in prison now and show them support.
And your members of parliament.
Exactly.
It's good. Now, does anyone have any questions? And like I'd said before, there's lots of free magazines in the back there if you guys want to take them. There's also free rolling papers. They're from the highway. Our friend Julie, I think, is there in the background. Just take one. Awesome.
I take a dessert spoon of hemp seed oil every day. And my sister died of Crohn's disease. Does the nourishment from that hemp seed oil prevent Crohn's disease, or is it not sufficient?
No one knows because there's not been studies on it. But if you use cannabis, if you just put just a little bit of raw cannabis in your diet, less than a joint in a meal, just add it to a salad or whatever you're eating, the next day your bowels just love marijuana. So it's you can tell your bowels love marijuana. It makes you regular. And there's many of the bowel diseases are completely alleviated with cannabis.
I have colitis, which is a little bit different, and I also have
Leaf or bud?
15 more growths inside my colon that I'm treating with cannabis. And without the cannabis, I feel it would be a lot worse. There are days where it's really painful, and using the right type of suppositories and eating enough cannabis seems to be the solution, as well as having the operations that the doctors are having performed on me.
Should it be leaf or bud, or doesn't it matter?
The suppositories
For the-
are made by Acida, and they're done with a heat press oil, and then raw cannabis, so not bud, just like the raw plant itself, juiced. At
Any
least
part
that's
of the
my
plant will
recommendation.
help. Any
But yeah.
part of the plant will help. Even the roots will help. But the bud has most of the medicine. But if you have leaves that you're not going to do anything else with, definitely throw them in your diet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh.
Okay. I don't really know much. So when you say leaves, do you mean any of the leaves on the plants or certain leaves?
Yeah, the plant is really just either bud or fan leaves, and all parts of the plant have some medicine on it.
So do you dry them to put them on the salad, or do you just have them green?
You can. You can actually eat it when they're fresh. People juice
Yeah,
cannabis leaves.
juicing is really good.
Yeah.
So any way you can use the cannabis plant is going to help you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one question here, and then we might wrap that up, and we'll... Okay, oh, sorry, Trini, there's one more person over there, but there's a guy here first.
So you said that people were expecting weed to be legal in Canada July 1st, but you don't think that's going to happen? And you think they're pushing it back and potentially waiting until the next election? Could you explain?
There are some articles recently, I can pull one up if you give me a second. It was just this morning where they're talking about pushing it back because they don't have the supply to meet the demand. Unfortunately, when they, I know, how ridiculous is that, right? So
funny.
they didn't, as far as I can tell, they didn't give enough of the okay to enough licensed producers to produce enough marijuana. So right now there's enough to take care of all of the medicinal patients, but not recreational clients. So now they're kind of stuck in limbo. Let me try and find it. It was just this morning I was kind of like, wow.
Dennis Perone was the first person I know that said that all cannabis use is medical. I'd like to add the caveat that all cannabis use is medical, even if you don't understand the complex science of the ECS, the endocannabinoid signaling system. So a lot of people that aren't educated in DNA replication and protein metabolism, they can still receive medical effect from cannabis, even though they're using it recreationally. So they're just not sophisticated enough to understand it is a medicine.
Okay, so it was on the Globe and Mail, and it says regulatory lag to push legal marijuana to late summer.
I read recently that Oregon had a surplus, so hell, you know, they should
Right,
be,
wouldn't that be good?
We have another question over here.
Yeah, I was informed the other day by maybe some 50-something-year-old man who maybe he's a psychiatrist, and he says marijuana is bad for your brain. Is he just not informed on the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, or?
I'm glad you asked. I did a study
I'm
about
concerned.
4 years ago called Ignorance is Not Bliss. It's in Cannabis Digest. And we called 157 medical schools in the United States, and we asked the directors of the curriculum if they were teaching the ECS to the students, or if they had a department of ECS, or a director of the ECS, or if they had organized courses, or if they even mentioned it in ancillary courses like pathophysiology, neuroanatomy, or pharmacology. And the answer was only 13% of medical schools in the United States even mention this. Nobody has organized courses, so it's kind of like a forbidden subject, and we're on the infancy of this science. And this science is going to explode, and it's going to replace the majority of our pharmaceuticals and building materials and clothes and everything else.
Wow, that's big. I was going to say, we'll sort of wind it up now, guys. And,
Yeah,
and
for
once
sure.
again...
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, and you're going to be speaking again. Both these lovely people will be speaking again tomorrow and on Sunday. And yes, please do grab them and have a yarn if you want to, especially if you didn't get to ask a question then. So we've got to keep rolling along because we've got lots of things.
And we can answer questions at the back. We're no
Yeah.
problem.
If
Well,
anybody-
I was going to say, rather than hang out at the back, there's this beautiful cafe happening next door here. I don't know if anyone knows, but there's all sorts of amazing food and coffee and drinks. And it's probably a bit of a quiet place away from the madness of the street as well. So please feel free to sort of wander in there and hang out too.
If anybody wants to get a hold of me, my email is cali215doc@gmail.com.
And I think that's on the web as well, so on the Mardi Gras web. So,
All right.
okay, thank you so much. Awesome.